Welcome. Thank you.
Good evening. It is an honor to speak here on the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe peoples. And it is an honor to have been invited by Knox, Toronto Chinese, and Ebenezer United Churches to speak at UTalks for the love of the world. My talk is entitled Education, Women, and Leadership. So last year, my daughter's junior kindergarten teacher asked parents to visit the class to talk about their professions. I volunteered because my daughter, Zeta, giggled at the idea of having her mom in the class. I volunteered because I think of public school as a community, which means that as a community member, it is my responsibility, if I am able, to participate beyond drop-offs, pickups, and paying taxes. I volunteered because after I accepted the appointment at the University of Waterloo, my husband Robert and I identified neighborhoods we could afford in the west end of Toronto that would facilitate my hour-long commute to Waterloo. Then we determined the best French immersion school. Then we found its catchment area. Then we looked for homes that were walking distance from the school, and only then did we buy a house. We believe in education. I volunteered because my mother, May, told my sister Gail and me that our education was one of the few things that no one would ever be able to take away from us. But my sister and I learned early on that what was taught in the classroom was only part of our education. We learned that our education included the artwork on the walls of our home, the wide range of extracurricular activities that we participated in, the theater and award ceremonies that we attended, the time we spent with family and friends, and the time we spent at Ebenezer United Church practically every Sunday. Each one of these moments were essential parts of our education. But I also volunteered to talk about my profession in Zeta's school and in her class because I categorically forgot that 4- and 5-year-old children are discerning and candid. When you're boring, they let you know it. And so as the days approached, I was scared. I asked Robert, Zeta, and my sister for help, and here's what we came up with. I said to the class, "My name is Dr. Keleta-Mae. I am a professor. I read, write, and teach. I read, write, and teach about politics and performance. Politics are about how we take care of our families, each other, our land, our water, and our air. One way we take care of these things is by voting." Then I gave each child a crayon and a small piece of paper. They had 3 choices: circle, triangle, or square. They chose a shape, drew the shape on their piece of paper, folded it in half, and put it in our ballot box, which was one of Zeta's old shoe boxes that she decorated for the event. So during my presentation, the children told me important things like, "Zeta's mom, it's my sister's birthday today." "Zeta's mom, my dad bought a truck." We counted the ballots aloud. Circles won. The children went to recess, and I was relieved. I was relieved because, like many of you here tonight, I know that educating children is an incredibly important act that has far-reaching effects on our communities and on our world. And so I wanted to do my small part well. We all have a part to play. Each one of us is teaching children things in all of the small interactions that shape our everyday lives. And I believe that when education is practiced at its very best, it can transform us. It inspires us to expand our vision of ourselves and of our planet. And we need to do that actively in Canada, especially now with the formation of a new government. We need to hold them to account and be persistent in our demand that they fulfill the mandate that they have been given. We also need to hold our opposition parties to account and be persistent in our demand that they monitor and balance the policies and practices of the government in power. And we need to do this because at this particular moment, we are in desperate need of an expansive vision of how we can relate to one another across the many differences that constitute the breadth of our humanity. And we are in need of this leadership, especially now, because it was just last month that the flames of discrimination were lit during the federal election campaigns by talk of niqabs at citizenship ceremonies. And then those flames were stoked by talks of removing citizenship from convicted terrorists. And then gasoline was poured on the fire when the conservatives promised that if reelected, they would create a barbaric cultural practices tip line so that people could call and report incidences of barbaric cultural practices. What alarmed me most about that series of events was that the conservatives' poll numbers went up. They went up with each inflammatory promise. Voters bought into a campaign strategy that was essentially a story about us against the terrorists, Muslim, brown men, and women they control. And they were buying into the discrimination because what was just beneath it was a growing angst about Islam. And that angst is growing in part because our political leaders have yet to lead a frank national conversation in the post-Parliament Hill attack and post-September 11, 2001 era. And if that angst is left unchecked, it will turn into institutionalized Islamophobia that could take generations to eradicate. And so yes, we need our political leaders to talk about the values espoused by the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms and the complex challenges of living those values day after day. And we need that not only in our federal policies, but also in our everyday lives. Because essentially, it doesn't matter whether I or you understand or agree with each and every aspect of every religion. That is irrelevant. It's about the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms that are in place to protect all of us, especially the most vulnerable among us. I was introduced to the Christian teachings of protecting the most vulnerable among us as a child in a family who worshiped at Ebenezer. I taught Sunday school, sang in choirs, and played piano during offertories and processionals. If you visit Ebenezer United now, you'll see 2 large stained glass windows that feature images of a tall, slim Jesus with blonde hair, a straight nose, light-colored eyes, and cream-colored skin. In one stained glass window, the children around Jesus have features and skin colors that signal Asian, Black, and Eastern European ethnicities. My father sat on the committee that chose the stained glass windows in the 1980s, and he was instrumental in the inclusion of children of color. He argued that the church could not attract or retrain people of various ethnicities if we were not included in its institutional imagery. Ebenezer seized the opportunity to be a leader instead of maintaining the status quo. The inclusion of people of various skin colors in those stained glass windows was a big deal for our little church in a developing Toronto suburb. It was a symbol of equity and justice. I am proud that the United Church of Canada was a leader in the move to ordain women, lesbians, and gay people. I am proud because it demonstrates a commitment to not only protecting the most vulnerable among us, but a commitment to equity and justice. And these are the commitments that demonstrate leadership. Okay, so I'd like to ask you to do something. I'm going to say a word, and I'd like you to think of a person. It can be someone you know or just someone that you imagine. It doesn't actually matter, but I just want you to think of a person after I say this word. Are you ready? Yes? Okay. The word is leader. L-E-A-D-E-R, leader. Have you got your person? All right. I'm going to ask you a series of questions about that person whose image you're holding in your mind. What is the gender presentation of your person? Is it male, female, androgynous? What was their religious background? What is their ethnicity? What is their skin color? What is their sexual orientation? The majority of people in influential leadership positions in Canada are male, Judeo-Christian, of European descent, white, and heterosexual. Did your person look like that? Here's the thing. We need leaders who better reflect the actual population of this country. So that means that we need more women, people of color, indigenous people, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgendered, and queer people in leadership positions. These demographics of people have valuable perspectives on the status quo and the ways in which we can expand our society in more equitable and just ways. And they have these valuable perspectives because they have been the most vulnerable among us. They face the institutionalized sexism, racism, and homophobia that shape everyday life in Canada in subtle and overt ways. Now, to be very clear, there is a difference between being vulnerable and being a victim. I am in no way suggesting that women, people of color, indigenous peoples, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgendered, and queer people are victims. I am saying that they have been vulnerable to oppression and discrimination, and as a result of that, in order to survive and thrive in Canada, they have had to become smart and creative, flexible and disciplined, demanding and encouraging, and savvy at bureaucracy. We need leaders who can do that. We need leaders who have alternate perspectives from the status quo and as a result can contribute to the creation of a more expansive vision of ourselves and of our planet. So discussions in the media and everyday life when it comes to leadership and women, they often include a reference to this proverbial, the glass ceiling, right? And that glass ceiling implies that women are working hard. We're progressing through our careers, and then suddenly, out of nowhere, we smash our heads against this glass that we just hadn't even noticed. Alice Eagley, a professor of psychology, argues that, quote, the glass ceiling is simplistic in suggesting that there exists a single homogeneous barrier that shuts women out only from high-level positions. This image ignores the complexity and variety of the obstacles that women leaders can face even as they begin their careers. The glass barrier implies that women neither anticipate nor understand the special challenges that they face in ascending to higher positions, end quote. Research across multiple disciplines has grouped these challenges into three areas. There's one, organizational structures that complement the lives of their male workers. Two, the division of family labor. And three, cultural stereotypes that are discriminatory and prejudiced. Now, these obstacles don't magically appear, right, when women reach advanced leadership positions. Instead, these obstacles are insidious in the ways in which they impact the minutiae of our everyday lives. The ramifications of which, according to research across disciplines, is that women drop out, opt out, and avoid career advancement opportunities all throughout their careers. In other words, regardless of whether or not women pursue leadership positions, we still have to deal with these complex and difficult working conditions. There is no way to avoid the challenges that women face, and that these challenges they only face because they are women. Eagley tells us that it's not a glass ceiling. It's a labyrinth, a puzzle that requires women to pause, back up, and change directions until they reach the center. In the article, The Confidence Gap, journalists Katie Lay and Claire Shipman cautioned that, quote, for decades, women have misunderstood an important law of the professional jungle. It's not enough to keep one's head down and plug away, checking items off a list. Having talent isn't merely about being competent. Confidence is a part of that talent. You have to have it to excel, end quote. Lay and Shipman argue that when things go wrong, women tend to assume the blame. And when things go right, we tend to credit other people or circumstances. And they say that women's obsession with perfection kills their confidence. Quote, "We don't answer questions until we are totally sure of the answer. We don't submit a report until we've edited it ad nauseum. And we don't sign up for that triathlon unless we know we are faster and fitter than is required. We watch our male colleagues take risks while we hold back until we're sure we are perfectly ready and perfectly qualified. We fixate on our performance at home, at school, at work, at yoga class, even on vacation. We obsess as mothers, as wives, as sisters, as friends, as cooks, as athletes. The irony is that striving to be perfect actually keeps us from getting much of anything done." End quote. And women learn all of this, Lay and Shipman's research concludes. Women learn all of this as girls. As girls who in classrooms, playgrounds, and sports fields are praised for being good and polite, rewarded for completing tasks neatly and quietly, and discouraged from being rambunctious and opinionated. Girls are taught to avoid risks and to avoid making mistakes, both skills that some research suggests are essential to the development of one's confidence. And that's why what happens in those elementary classrooms across our country is so very important. And that's why the ways in which we interact with the little girls we know in our families, churches, communities, and on the street is so very important. So what can we as women and men do to help girls become leaders? Well, we need to give them space to take risks and make mistakes. We need to encourage them to be assertive and opinionated, and we need to praise them for their intellect and abilities, and not just for being pretty, good, and nice. And what can we as women and men do to help women be leaders? Well, we need to reduce their domestic responsibilities and reduce their child care and elder care responsibilities. We need to encourage women to leave perfection behind and act. And we need to praise them for their intellect, abilities, and accomplishments, and not just for being beautiful and reliable. And what can we, members of the United Church of Canada, do to support the education of girls and women to better position them as leaders? Well, the United Church teaches that God is an omniscient, omnipotent being that is not human. And yet, God is routinely referred to as Him, He, and our Father. It is time to start calling God she, her, and our mother. Now, is there a little part of you right now that's saying that's silly, that's trivial, that's cute, it won't change anything, it doesn't matter? If you're feeling that, then just do it anyway. If it really doesn't matter, then just call God she, her, our mother. Right? Now, if there's still a little part of you that's feeling just a little bit of apprehension and is feeling a little bit unsettled, I suspect that it's unsettling because calling God's name is powerful. And shifting that power from male to female is a powerful act of equity, justice, and leadership. We need to call God she, her, and our mother when we say grace at mealtime, teach Sunday school, mingle in our narthexes, sing from our pews, and speak from our pulpits. We need to call God she, her, and our mother in the presence of girls and women, to underscore that God lives in each and every girl and woman. We need to call God she, her, and our mother in the presence of boys and men, to underscore and remind them that God lives in every single girl and woman they pass all day, every day. A small and powerful act of equity and justice, a small and powerful act of leadership can look like us calling on her right now as we bow our heads and say, "Our mother, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy dominion come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And deliver us from evil. For thine is the dominion, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Thank you.